Hey everyone, before we dive into today's story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Your support means the world. Now, let's get into it. The small workshop smelled of cedar, dust, and a faint trace of oil from the worn tools scattered across the benches. The rhythmic tapping of a hammer against wood was the only sound breaking the silence of the room. Marcus sat hunched over a workbench, his hands steady but worn from years of labor as he carved into the thick mahogany. The boat was nearly finished. A small model, no bigger than a forearm, yet it seemed to embody so much more. Crafted with precision, care, and love, it was far more than just a toy. It was a message. The ship was a reflection of Marcus himself, sturdy, simple, and built with quiet determination. He had been working on the boat for months, sneaking into the garage after long days at the factory, ensuring every detail was perfect. The tiny mast, the smooth deck, the polished edges, all had to be right. It didn't matter that the boat would never sail the open seas. It wasn't the size or the scale that mattered to Marcus, it was the idea behind it, the love, the connection. Marcus wasn't a shipbuilder, he wasn't even an expert carpenter. He was just a father, working with his hands to create something for the son he loved more than anything. A simple man, trying to show affection in the only way he knew how. Ethan had been obsessed with boats since he was 5. It started innocently enough, with picture books about pirates and explorers. His favorite toy was a little plastic boat that he would drag through the water in the bathtub, making it sail on imaginary seas. But soon, it grew into something more. He began to study real boats at the harbor, pressing his small hands against the cold glass as he watched them bob gently in the water. His wide eyes were filled with awe every time they passed a sailing vessel, and Marcus would stand beside him, watching as his son imagined a life of adventure. "I want to sail one day," Ethan would say, gripping Marcus's hand with fierce determination. His face was full of that childlike hope, a future so vivid and bright it seemed impossible to ignore. Marcus, who had never been good with words, could never explain how much he wished he could give Ethan that life. The words would always catch in his throat. "One day," he would answer, a small smile playing on his lips. It wasn't that Marcus didn't love his son. He did, deeply. But expressing it, especially verbally, had always been difficult for him. The words never came out right. Each "I love you" felt awkward, forced and imperfect. Yet Marcus knew there was a way to show his love. He could build, he could fix, and that, he believed, was how he would show his son just how much he meant to him. So when Ethan had won the school's annual writing competition, Marcus decided it was time to create something special for him. Not just any toy. No, this had to be something meaningful. A real wooden model ship. Something Ethan could hold in his hands and know, without a doubt, that it was made just for him. A gift that would say all the things Marcus couldn't. The night before the ceremony, Marcus worked late into the evening, sanding the final touches on the boat's smooth, gleaming deck. He ran his fingers over the edges, satisfied with the progress. Every curve, every edge was perfect. He had done it. It wasn't just a boat, it was a piece of his heart, crafted into something tangible. The soft glow of the overhead lamp illuminated the workshop, the dust motes floating in the air like tiny, fleeting memories. The boat was wrapped in brown paper tied with twine. It was simple, but Marcus knew that Ethan would see it for what it was, a token of his father's love. It was late, but Marcus stepped into Ethan's room anyway. He peeked through the door, his eyes softening as he looked at his son. Ethan was curled up in bed, his face peaceful, innocent, his breathing slow and steady. Marcus stood in the doorway for a moment, taking in the sight. His son, his little boy. He thought of all the times he had promised Ethan a future, one filled with sailing and adventure, the kind of life that Marcus never had the courage to pursue himself. Marcus quietly closed the door behind him, a sense of anticipation rising in his chest. Tomorrow would be the day. Tomorrow, Ethan would hold the boat. Tomorrow, he would know, without a doubt, how much Marcus loved him. But tomorrow never came. The scream that tore through the house in the middle of the night was enough to send Marcus's heart plummeting into his stomach. His wife's voice raw and desperate, calling Ethan's name. Panic surged through him as he leaped from bed and sprinted down the hallway, his feet stumbling as his mind scrambled to make sense of what was happening. When he reached Ethan's room, the sight that greeted him stopped him cold. Ethan was lying still, his face ashen, his small body motionless. The words cardiac arrest and unknown condition filled the air like distant thunderclaps, but they made no sense. How could this happen? His son, so full of life just hours ago, was now gone. The paramedics arrived swiftly, but they couldn't bring Ethan back. The life had simply slipped away, leaving nothing but a cold, lifeless body behind. Marcus stood there, frozen, unable to process the truth. His mind refused to accept it. Ethan had been there. Just hours ago, they had been planning the future, and now he was gone. The funeral came and went in a blur of faces, words, and hollow gestures. Friends and family came to offer their condolences, but Marcus couldn't hear them. His mind was elsewhere. His wife sobbed against his shoulder, but Marcus felt no tears. There was a numbness inside him, a tightness in his chest that he couldn't shake. Something inside him had closed off. He couldn't access the grief. It was too painful, too real, so he shut it out. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan's room remained untouched. The door was always slightly ajar, as though waiting for him to return. Marcus stopped going to work. He spent his days in the garage, staring at the wrapped package on his workbench, the boat that he would never give to his son. One evening, something within him snapped. Driven by a force he didn't understand, Marcus took the boat and drove to the harbor. The sun was dipping below the horizon, casting a soft, golden light over the water. The boats in the harbor rocked gently with the tide, the sound of their creaking masts blending with the soft whispers of the wind. Marcus walked to the edge of the dock, the weight of the boat in his hands. He unwrapped the paper slowly, his fingers trembling as he traced the contours of the small wooden ship. The world around him felt strangely silent. There was so much he wanted to say, so many things he could never find the words for. He wanted to tell Ethan how much he loved him, how sorry he was for all the things left unsaid. He wanted to apologize for not being the father Ethan deserved, for not giving him the future he had promised. But there was no one to hear him, no one to listen. With a deep breath, Marcus knelt at the water's edge. He placed the boat gently on the surface, watching as it bobbed for a moment before the tide caught it. It drifted away, carried by the current, the tiny mast standing tall against the waves. Marcus stayed there for what felt like an eternity, watching as the boat slowly disappeared into the distance. His chest ached, a heavy, unbearable weight pressing down on his heart. His hands clenched into fists at his sides as he fought back the tears. Love doesn't always need to be spoken. Sometimes the things we build, the things we create, are enough to say everything that words